but you have, I think it's interesting to dive into like team structure. So I was just wondering if you could just talk to us a little bit about team structure and your approach to the criminal defense practice.
Sure, yeah. And keep in mind, we're always evolving. What we're doing today could easily be a complete 180 from what we're doing in 2 years or 3 years. We're always looking to kind of burn it down and rebuild as we grow. And not just for the purpose of doing that, but for what is best for the firm. But we grew quite a bit. We had 6 people right before. We had grown from about 3.5 people in 2019 to 6 right before COVID. 2 lawyers, 3 legal assistants, 3 like catch-all, do everything, and we had an internal marketing director. Um, we exploded from after COVID. We had a nice little practice, right? We were probably top 10 in at least Fort Lauderdale, Broward County in size and cases, and we just had rocket ship kind of growth, because of the decisions that we made during COVID, which that we can talk about that a different day. But we hunkered down and we just worked really hard, and we grew from 6 to 13 employees in 1 year, and then from 13 to 20 in the next year. So we had massive growth, and I've always been focused on the marketing because that's exciting to me, but not so much of the system. So everything kind of broke. Luckily, we were on EOS, so we had our safe space to figure it all out and talk and learn and try to get better. But for where we are now, we have 6 attorneys. We have four and a half in production. Manny's maybe, half in production. Um, we have pods, we have virtual assistants. Maybe we're 13-ish people in-house and maybe 10 virtually, something around there, where we have, 2.5 years ago when we really explored it, Manny and I debated for a long time, can we get virtual employees to be legal assistants, not just do a little intake or do some marketing or graphic design? And he was very against it at first, but we thought it through and talked it through from some of our mastermind groups and in EOS, and ultimately said, let's do it. Let's try. And it's been one of the best decisions we've had. So we have pods where 2 lawyers have 1 in-house legal assistant. We have a VLA 1 that has a bunch of set of duties and a VLA 2 that has a bunch of set duties. And that we believe can run about 150 to 180 cases, really 150 to 175 is kind of optimal cases at a
Mm-hmm.
time. And that's the way that currently we're structuring our pods. So it's, and then we have our intake, obviously team separate. Our legal assistants are
Mm-hmm.
always backup because, sometimes when our phones are super hot, like, we,
Yeah.
it's like, all right, guys, we are segmented, but at the same time, we're not. If the phone's
Yeah.
ringing, just pick it
Yeah.
up, right? And triage, yeah. But yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
kind of the basic, the general way that we've done it.
I like digging into this conversation, the pods versus the cross functional pods versus like the top down teams, and I think I first heard in Mike Morse's book Fireproof. He was talking about how they went from a team, top down hierarchy to the pods. Have you seen like the benefit from a communicate, like what's been the main benefit? Is it the communication? Is it the kind of managing each P&L kind of from a profit
Right.
perspective?
Well, we haven't even got that far with the P&L.
Yeah.
We're still progressing forward with the finances, but yeah, that's on our goal, is to look at profitability by lawyer, by pod, and all that. It's been really good because in 2021 we hired 3 lawyers in 8 months. We went from 2 lawyers, me and Manny, to 5 lawyers by August. And at that time, the 2 lawyers that came on in January and then April, they're like, well, how do I know which cases are mine? And who do I go to? We just have 3 legal assistants. Do I have my own? Is it you? And I'm like, I don't know. We all just kind of, do it all together and talk. And, we used my case at the time, which was fine, but then we quickly outgrew it. And I was, and he's like, well, I kind of need to know, like, are these mine? Are these yours? How do we, right? And we're like, okay, we actually need to have a real system instead of, Adam and Manny just divvy things up and talk about it every day because we share a wall together. So it really helped in that regard, about having better clarity as far as who's doing what, which legal assistants are working on what cases, who you can go to, looking at capacity analysis, skew analysis, um, all these different things. We're still working on the financing, right? So that's something we're working on to really have real data and metrics for profitability per employee, per pod, per lawyer. But yeah, it's been really good overall. And then I think it's good for the client because for so long we have so many clients that were attached to me, and in a great way, because we've always given Ritz-Carlton level customer service. But now you're still going to get that, but in the context of big firm strength and power, but you're still going to have that personal connection to your pod. It might not be with me directly anymore, but I want people to have that personal connection, be like, okay, my team is Augustina, Carlos, Gretchel, and Scott, and that's my pod and that's my team. Right.
Mhm.
So that's really important to us.
That's incredible. Thank you for the breakdown. There's a lot of ways I've seen different ways that different approaches, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
Chris,
I,
I'll say one other thing too. What the PI lawyers do, which we're always looking, right? And we're always trying to take from them. Some PI lawyers that I know, the case managers run the pods. And
Mhm.
so our in-house legal assistants, we're talking about rebranding them as case managers, because that's kind of what they do. Because I mean, our VLAs talk to our clients as well. Some of them can do anything that they can in-house, except for notarize documents and just greet somebody in person, right? But we're even toying with the idea of the two in-house legal assistants that we're going to brand, that kind of run on each pod, putting them at the top of the pod on the accountability chart and saying, yeah, Gretchel and Nikki run the pods. They're the case managers. They run the pods. Lawyers, you report to them.
Oh
So
wow.
we're toying with that. We haven't rolled that out, but that's kind of my next iteration that we'll see if it works or not.